In this video, I'm making a wall-mounted display case for a wine bottle and a couple of glasses. Now, I've been commissioned to make this, so I've got to make it unique, I've got to make it special, as it's a gift for a couple of his very close friends. So, we're going to take some rough timber and we're going to mill it up and make it into something, hopefully, pretty unique. Follow along and see how we go. Voila! Look at that! So this here is a small slab of Rimu, which is a native timber in New Zealand. It's not a great looking slab. There's a few knots, there's a bit of rots, a little bit of borer, but I think there's a lot of character in it, and I think I can get the wine rack out of it. It's one of the beautiful things about using slabs like this is taking something that's quite ugly and making something quite beautiful out of it. So the first job here is we're just going to cut the pieces to rough length, assess what we've got, and then we've got to then flatten these and make boards out of them. This here is my little thicknesser sled. This is how I flatten the boards off. You know, I only get weekends to do this sort of thing, so anything I can do to speed the process up. And it's pretty simple. I put the boards on, and then you can see I put wedges on the flat surface to level the boards up as much as possible, to take, you know, they've been cut and got bits of warp in them. And then I basically hot glue them onto this flat board. Once I've got them all hot glued onto the board, we'll then start putting it through the thicknesser and gradually take them down till I get one flat side. You can do this by hand plane, using a scrub plane just to level the back of the boards off before putting them through the thicknesser, and I have done that. There's videos on my channel of the process of doing that. But this is a quick, easy way of doing it as well, and takes those twists and warps out of the board really quickly. And as you can see here, we've got a couple of really nice flat faces now. Of course, once we have those flat faces, we can then pull these off and flip them over and do the other side. Alright, we have a plan. So I want to try and leave the live edge on the backboard and the front of the shelves. This board here I'm going to utilize as the shelves. So we're going to create a straight edge on one side, and I'm going to try and leave the live edge on the other side. Once I've cut this off, we'll just get the plane and we'll square and smooth off one side. I want to make the shelves on the display rack thinner than the main backing board, so I'm going to take off probably 10mm off this shelf, thin it down. This is a good way of doing it nice and quickly, using the bandsaw with the rip blade in it, and just take a slab off the side of it. Then it's just a quick run through the thicknesser just to tidy the face up, and now we have the board that we need for the shelves. Now, how do you square off two ends of a board when there's no straight edge? As you can see, this is going to be the backing board, this piece, and it's got two live edges on it with no square edge to put it against the drop saw and cut it square. So the process here is we'll put a center line on it. Well, I'll measure the wider end and the thinner end and find the center point, create a center line like this, and then we can just run the square up onto that center line and basically draw a line off the square, and then what we have is 2 square lines off the center line, which means we can trim to those lines and tidy the board up. So these are going to be the 2 shelves. The top one, it's the top biggest shelf will be for the wine glasses and the neck of the wine bottle to go through. And this piece here that I'm just cutting down is going to be what the wine bottle will sit on. Both these pieces I'm going to recess into the backing board. Alright, next thing, I think we'll router the channels that these will go into. So routing these channels is a pretty simple process. As you can see, a couple of pieces of straight edge with double-sided tape, which the bearing pattern bit can run along and create a nice channel. Now, I made the decision at this point that I wanted the shelf to follow the live edges. I didn't want to just take it right across on the bottom shelf. So you can see here I've only channeled out on the inside flat area so that the shelf will actually align with the live edge on the outside. The second shelf being wider, or needing to be wider, is a pretty easy job of just routering a channel through the whole thing. So that's the 2 pockets for the 2 shelves. I just needed to square off the edges on the shelf that we want to follow the live edge with the chisel, and tidy up the round corners that the router makes, which is a pretty simple process. Now, to figure out the angle that I need to cut this shelf to suit the angle of the live edge, I put a mark on each side of the shelf indicating where the live edge landed on the shelf, and then I just connect those 2 lines together, and then using a bevel gauge I can then set the angle on that, and once that's set I can set my table saw to the same angle. And once I've done that, I can then just cut the angle on the shelf. Pretty close. And if I've done it right, we should have a nice snug fit with the shelf following the live edge. That'll do. It's a pretty good fit. Now I usually run the smoothing plane along the edge here to get the final fit, but this wood had such a twist and curls in it that every time I put the plane anywhere near it, it would tear it out. So I found that if I just used the sander and then gradually sanded down the edge, I got the same result. Well, I think we'll call that in. Once the shelves were in, we then drilled some pilot holes from the back, and then we attached them with a couple of screws. They will be glued in, and generally gluing in should have been strong enough, but I like to lean on the side of caution and put some mechanical fastenings in here as well. The shelves. pretty good. Theory there is the wine bottle will go there with a hole in the top, so that'll go in there. On each side will be a glass hanging upside down. Should work. Should work. It was about now that I realised that we've got a bit of a problem. You can see we're getting a cupping in the backing board because there's a knot just in here. You can see the knot just forming and it's cracked. So the board is cupped over time, over the week that it's been sitting around. So we need to fix that problem, and I'm going to fix it by running bow ties in it. I'll put one in the back here to support the crack in the back and one across the face grain here to stop it cracking any further. Yeah, and then we'll fill the rest of the crack with epoxy and level it off through the thicknesser again. Simple trick here is I put a bit of masking tape down, a bit of super glue accelerator and super glue onto the bow tie, and then I'll actually run a knife edge along the bow tie to give me the cut edge of what I need to cut to. And once I've got that marked in, we can just lever off the bow tie, which will take the masking tape, and there's the area that I need to cut to. We'll drill out the waist first, as much as I can. It's only a small area, and then using a smaller router bit, I'll router out most of the waist, and then once that's done, we'll tidy up the rest of it with chisels. I'm gluing in these bow ties with epoxy, 2-pot epoxy, nice and strong, and it'll help fill in that crack as well. What I do from here, the leftover epoxy there, I'll actually tip into the rest of that crack and fill it up so it's all nice and solid. And once I've done that, it stabilizes the whole backing board, and pretty much from this point on it hasn't cupped. I find the best way to remove any excess epoxy that's on the surface is using a card scraper. It does a really great job in this process of taking that excess epoxy off. Alright, next job here is we want to router in a slight recess in the bottom of this shelf for the wine bottle to go into. So I made a quick jig up here. I drilled a hole through this jig, and then we'll tape this onto double-sided tape this onto the piece, and then router this out. Now this is one of the reasons I love my workbench. It's not a flash workbench, but it allows me to do just this. I'll run some screws into it to clamp this piece onto the bench, so then I can safely router out that recess that we're going to put in there for the wine bottle. You can see it here once I take it off, a nice little recess, which is just allows the bottle to sit in it nicely. Then I'll give space there. I'll give space there. Okay, let's drill some holes. This middle hole here is what the neck of the wine bottle's going to go through, and then once I've drilled that out, I'll drill 2 smaller holes on each side, which is where the stem of the wine glasses will run through. Now I'm cutting the 2 tracks for the wine glasses to be able to be hung onto the shelf. The wine glasses will be upside down, so the stem of the wine glass will go through this track and then sit where I've drilled the hole. So we're cutting these out on the table saw. It's just a pretty simple process of aligning it up to the lines and cutting it out. Now what I wanted to do here is I'm making a little template, because I want to carve the bottom of these circles out where the wine glass goes. You know, I'm a beer drinker. I don't know much about wine glasses, but I've seen enough to know that they have a curve on the bottom of them. So what I want to do is when the glass is put onto the shelf, that curve of the bottom of the wine glass foot has somewhere to sit. So what I want to do here is I want to carve that out, hand carve that out, just to make them a little bit unique. Yeah, this is not necessary, I don't think, but I think this is quite a nice touch, and it's a nice look, and that's what the template's for, to allow me to carve that recess evenly out, so that we've got a nice recess circle there. Yeah, it just adds a little bit more character and a little bit more uniqueness to the shelf. Then we put the round over bit into the router and just round over the edges in the middle hole for the wine bottle neck. Now we get out the trusty spoke shave, and we'll just work on tidying up these live edges a little bit, taking off a bit of the roughness and what's left over of the bark. This was a thing that was specifically requested as a bit of a special touch to the shelf, and that's the name of the 2 people who the shelf is for, and a special date relating to them as well. From my understanding, the date is in reference to the day they got engaged. So this is an engagement present. So to make it a little bit more special, we're going to carve in their names and that date. So you can see I've printed it out on a bit of paper in a font that I like, and a size I like that fits, and then using some carbon paper I can transfer this onto the board, and then using a range of chisels we'll basically start working the carving out. When I'm doing letter carving like this, generally it's I aim to carve the center bit. You can see where I've marked the center lines. I'll carve that first, and then I'll carve the outside edges to that center line, creating the V of the lettering. And then it's just a process of using whatever chisels I have to create the curves. The straight lines are relatively easy because you use a straight chisel, but all the curves in that, you're using different ranges of curved chisels. Alright, we'll whack this into a bit of a time lapse to speed it up, so you So we're starting to work into the stage now of what I what I like to call the seasoning stage of the project. So when you're cooking something and you're at the end of the meal, you put a little bit of salt and pepper just to give it a bit of seasoning. Well, this is what I call this process. This is where you go through and take any sharp edges off, create nice rounded corners, create nice chamfers and edges. Just basically going through everything and giving it a little finesse and tying it up. So it looks good, and then as well as it feels good. So when you touch the shelf and the project, you can feel the edges are nice and smooth and rounded. And, you know, it's just the basic seasoning of woodworking. Then before assembling everything, I'll just go through all the sanding grits and finish up all the sanding. Here's a nice shot of the dogs. This is specifically for Ruby, my #1 fan, who says I'm not showing enough of the dogs in my videos. Well, here they are while I'm working away sanding, doing nothing but sleeping. Alright, now we have the final glue up. We'll bit of glue and glue it all together. I'm using Danish oil to finish this project with. The first coat will go on quite heavy. It'll, as you can see here, it'll soak it up like mad. So I put quite a heavy coat on initially. I'll let it stand for 10 minutes and then I'll buff it off and let it dry. Once it's dry, I'll lightly go over it with 444 steel wool, and then give it another coat, and I'll do this 3 times. And to finish, I'll just give it a nice coat of wax, buff it on, and let it sit for 10 minutes, and then buff it off to a nice finish. These are the wall brackets going into the back here. You can see I just routed a little recess for them. There's a previous video where I did a whiskey rack, and I show how I cut that in there. So if you want to see how that's done, check out my other video where I build the whiskey rack. But these are great because you can mount these, mount a couple of screws in the wall, they'll lock into that, and the shelf will drop flush to the wall. And that's it. She's all finished. Quick buff to finish, and the job's done. And just like that,